It's funny how memories of childhood seem to shine a little brighter when you look back from a place of pain. When I think about the house where I grew up, this big white colonial on a quiet street just outside Boston, I remember running barefoot on polished wood floors, the sweet smell of my mother's lemon cake drifting through the air, and laughter echoing from every corner. There was always so much noise in our home, so much movement. My brother Jacob was 2 years older than I, always bigger, faster, more certain of himself. But despite our differences, I thought we were a team. I really did. Even when we bickered about stupid things, like whose turn it was to feed Max, our aging golden retriever, or who would get the last slice of pizza, it felt like there was a line connecting us, a bond of shared childhood, unbreakable and steady. I remember afternoons sprawled across the living room rug with Jacob, building castles out of wooden blocks or racing toy cars around in dizzy circles. Our parents worked long hours at their law firm downtown, but we had each other. I was the quiet one, the daydreamer with books piled to the ceiling, while Jacob was the star, football, student government, always surrounded by friends. Sometimes I wondered if he even noticed me when he was busy shining, but at night, when it was just the two of us, we'd sneak down to the kitchen for midnight snacks and whisper secrets. I never imagined there would come a time when he'd want me gone from his life. The truth is, as we grew older, things started to shift. I left for college in California, chasing sunshine and freedom and some idea of who I wanted to become. Jacob stayed close to home, went to Harvard, and then started climbing the ladder at a fancy law firm in New York. Our paths drifted apart, but I always thought there was a line that would lead us back to each other. That's why, when Mom called me one chilly October morning and mentioned Jacob was getting married in New York, my heart leapt. I pictured us standing together in a grand old cathedral, all dressed up and laughing at some childhood memory only we remembered. I didn't even know the name of the woman he was marrying. It didn't matter. All that mattered was that he was my brother, and I'd be there for him. The wedding plans seemed to take over every conversation in the family. Invitations were flying across America and even Europe, distant cousins I barely remembered, family friends from our parents' college days. I waited for my invitation, the thick cream envelope with elegant gold script. Days turned into weeks and nothing arrived. At first, I shrugged it off. Maybe it got lost in the mail, I told myself. Maybe Jacob wanted to surprise me with something special. I kept checking the mailbox, feeling silly but hopeful. But the hope faded, replaced by a creeping sense of embarrassment. At work, my friends asked if I was excited about the wedding. I mumbled something about being busy, about not knowing the details. The truth was, I didn't know anything at all. No one from my family called to ask if I was coming, not even my parents. I tried to brush it off, focusing on the business I'd built from the ground up, blue sky charters, my fleet of private jets that took me from Los Angeles to London and back again. But in quiet moments, I found myself staring at old photos, wondering what I'd done to deserve being left out. Finally, I couldn't stand the silence any longer. One Friday night, with rain beating softly against the windows of my apartment, I dialed Jacob's number. My heart thudded in my chest, a heavy, anxious drum. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. "Hey, it's me," I started, trying to sound light, as if I didn't already know the answer. "I heard the big day is coming up. When's the wedding?" There was a pause, long enough for me to count the seconds. Then Jacob's voice, flat and cold, came through the line. "It's not your concern. Just stay out of it, Olivia. You're just a passenger's garbage collector." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I don't think I even understood what he meant at first, just that sharp edge in his words, the way he spit out my name. It felt like he was reaching through the phone and shoving me out of his life. My mind raced, replaying the years of shared birthdays, family dinners, the times I'd stuck up for him when Mom was mad about bad grades or broken windows. And now I was nothing to him. I managed, but my voice sounded small, like a child's. "You heard me," he said. "Just stay away." He hung up before I could say another word. I stared at my phone, the glow of the screen blurring through my tears. I don't cry easily, but that night I did. It wasn't just about missing a party. It was about being erased from my own family. About realizing, with brutal clarity, that Jacob didn't want me at the most important day of his life, and neither, it seemed, did anyone else. I thought about calling my parents, but even in my pain, I knew what they'd say. Dad would tell me not to take it personally. Mom would insist it was for the best, that maybe I'd been too distant for too long. It was easier for them if I were just the sister on the other side of the country, the one with her head in the clouds, flying jets from city to city. That night, I sat alone in my quiet apartment, the lights of Los Angeles twinkling beyond my window. For the first time in years, I let myself remember the girl I'd been in that big white house in Boston. The girl who believed her family would always have a place for her, no matter how far she flew. But things change.
People change.
And sometimes, the ones who should love you most are the first to push you away. I went to bed with Jacob's words echoing in my mind. Just a passenger's garbage collector. It stung not because it was true, but because he believed it. Because my brother couldn't see the woman I'd become. The woman who built an empire in the sky, who learned to fly on her own. As I drifted off to sleep, I promised myself one thing. I would not let his rejection define me. If I were just a passenger's garbage collector in a story, then I'd start telling my own. And so, that was the night I began to realize that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who believes in you, and who you become when the world turns its back. I didn't know it yet, but being left out of Jacob's wedding would change everything. For both of us. After my call with Jacob, I didn't sleep. Not really. I spent most of that night staring at the ceiling, letting the words replay in my mind. Just a passenger's garbage collector. There's a certain kind of ache that only family can give you, a pain so sharp it cuts through everything you thought was true. I kept thinking maybe it was a mistake, or a bad day, or some ridiculous misunderstanding. Jacob and I had always argued, but we were still family, weren't we? Surely, if I just explained what happened, my parents would understand. Maybe they'd even talk to him, set things right, bring us all back to the table like old times. So, the next morning, with dark circles under my eyes and a knot in my stomach, I picked up my phone and called my parents' house in Boston. The familiar ringtone made my heart pound, a rush of hope and dread tangled up together. I half expected my mom to answer, but instead, my dad picked up after the second ring. His voice was gruff as usual. "Hello? Hey, Dad. It's me. Olivia," I said, trying to sound normal, like nothing was wrong, like I hadn't been awake all night crying.
Liv, we were just talking about you.
How's life in California? There was a distant clatter in the background, maybe the sound of dishes or my mother fussing in the kitchen. I swallowed hard. "Can I talk to you for a second? It's about Jacob." I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could already feel my chest tightening. He must have heard it too, because he sighed, the way he always did when he sensed drama coming. "What about your brother?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. How Jacob had cut me out of his wedding, the way he'd spoken to me, how much it hurt. I didn't leave anything out. I even told him the exact words Jacob used, hoping maybe Dad would hear them and realize how cruel they sounded. But when I finished, there was a long silence. Then Dad let out a laugh, loud and careless, the kind that stings more than any insult. "He's right, Olivia. You always were more interested in picking up after others than doing something for yourself." The words hit me like a slap. For a second, I couldn't even speak. I had called looking for comfort, for a little bit of the old warmth that used to fill our house. Instead, I got laughter. I got dismissed. Before I could say anything, my mother's voice joined in, faint but clear through the speakerphone. "You know, not everyone is meant for the big leagues. Don't take it so personally, honey. Jacob has a lot going on. Maybe you should focus on your own life instead of worrying about his." There it was, my place in the family summed up in 2 sentences. To them, I was still the quiet daughter who kept to herself, who never quite fit in. I was the one who left Boston for California and never really came back, except for the occasional Christmas or wedding, always lingering on the edges of family photos. They didn't know who I'd become. They never asked what I did out west, how I managed to travel between Los Angeles and London every month, or why I worked so hard. In their eyes, I was still Olivia, The girl with her head in the clouds, a little lost, a little disappointing. Even as an adult, with my own business, my own house, and a life I'd built from nothing, it was like I hadn't really grown up at all, not in their eyes. For a moment, I thought about defending myself, about telling them the truth. I wanted to shout, "I'm not just picking up after others. I own a company. I employ people. I move millions of dollars around every year. I built something real." But the words stuck in my throat. What would be the point? They'd already decided who I was. My story didn't fit into the neat little boxes they'd drawn around me. I felt something break inside me, but instead of pain, it was like a weight was finally lifting. Maybe I was done trying to prove myself to people who didn't care to know me. So I said it calmly, more calmly than I felt. "Fine. We have no relationship now. Good luck with the wedding." There was another long silence. I thought I heard my mom gasp, but I didn't wait for her to recover. I ended the call and set my phone on the kitchen table. My hands were shaking, but I felt strangely free. For years, I had tried so hard to win their approval, to be the daughter they wanted, the sister who showed up and played her part. And what had it gotten me? A seat at the kids' table, even when I was 30 years old. The morning sun crept across the floor as I sat alone in my Los Angeles apartment. It should have been sad, but it wasn't. Instead, it felt like a new chapter was starting. Maybe family wasn't what I thought it was. Maybe, just maybe, it was okay to walk away from people who refused to see you. The hours drifted by as I thought about all the ways I had bent myself to fit into the mold my family expected. I thought about the times I'd flown across the country for birthdays, holidays, reunions. Always careful, always quiet, never wanting to upset the delicate balance. I remembered the family trips to the Cape, the way Jacob and my cousins dominated the conversations, while I stayed in the background, offering to help set the table or clean up after dinner. I was useful, reliable, invisible, but not anymore. If my family wanted to pretend I was just a passenger's garbage collector, fine. Let them. They didn't know that my life was bigger than they could imagine. They didn't know that the girl who used to watch airplanes from her bedroom window had grown up to own them, to fly them, to chart her course across continents and oceans. That afternoon, I went to the hangar where my jets were kept. The air inside was cool, humming with the quiet energy of machines waiting for flight. I ran my hand along the polished wing of my favorite plane, a sleek, silver Gulfstream, and felt a rush of pride. This was mine. All of it. Not because anyone handed it to me, but because I worked for it every day in ways my family would never understand. I stood there for a long time, listening to the distant sounds of the city, the muted roar of engines, and the laughter of the crew prepping a flight to Europe. I realized I wasn't alone. I had built a family of my own, a team who respected me, who saw me, who didn't care about old wounds or family baggage. Out here, I wasn't just Olivia, the disappointment. I was the boss, the woman in charge, the woman who said yes or no and meant it. That evening, as the sun set over the Pacific, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, looking out at the endless sky. My phone buzzed a few times, text from cousins, a message from an old classmate, nothing from my parents or Jacob. I didn't care. For the first time in a long while, I felt light. I felt whole. If they didn't want me at their table, I would build my own. And I would fill it with people who saw me, who valued me, who understood that sometimes the quiet ones grow up to soar higher than anyone ever expected. And that's how, with one simple call, I let go of the family I was born into and started claiming the life and the family I had chosen for myself. The truth is, I never really needed their approval. I spent most of my adult life quietly chasing things that mattered to me, not to them. For years, while my family back in Boston judged me as just another passenger's garbage collector, I was building something they couldn't even imagine. It all started the summer I turned 26, standing at the edge of a small airport in Santa Monica, watching a battered old Learjet take off into the blue California sky. I'd always loved planes. As a girl, I'd sit at my window and watch the contrails streak across the clouds, dreaming about where those flights might be going: Paris, Rome, London, New York. I was fascinated by the world beyond our small neighborhood, by the idea of moving through the air at 600 miles an hour, free from everything that weighed me down on the ground. That curiosity became obsession, and by my 20s, it had turned into a career. My first real paycheck went to flying lessons, then to hours logged in cramped cockpits, and finally, after a lucky string of investments, to buying my first jet, a tired, second-hand Cessna that needed more repairs than it was worth. But that plane was my ticket. I started Blue Sky Charters with nothing more than a name and a dream. I cleaned the plane myself, handled the bookings, and even flew some of the early flights when I couldn't afford a full-time crew. Every dollar I earned went right back into the company. A new navigation system here, a fresh coat of paint there. Little by little, word spread. I started flying tech entrepreneurs between Silicon Valley and Seattle, then entertainers from Los Angeles to Miami. Then once I bought my second and third jets, even executives from New York to London. Blue Sky Charters became a name people whispered about at private airports and luxury hotels. Our flights weren't just about convenience. They were about discretion, reliability, and a certain kind of understated glamour. There were times I'd walk through the hangar, my heels clicking on the polished floor, and have to remind myself that this was real. These 10 jets, worth more than $8 million each, were mine. My business. My rules. But I never told my family. Not once. I suppose I wanted to keep something for myself, a secret life, separate from their judgments and small expectations. I didn't need my father's approval or my mother's applause. I didn't want Jacob to suddenly claim me as the successful sister. For years, Blue Sky Charters was my hidden world, and I protected it fiercely. I suppose the one thing I never expected was that, in all that solitude, I would fall in love. But that's how life works, isn't it? When you finally let go of what everyone else wants, something good sneaks in when you're not looking. His name was Michael. He wasn't a celebrity or a billionaire client, but one of the pilots I'd hired when the company started to grow. He was steady and calm, with easy smiles and big, rough hands, the kind that told you he knew how to fix things. I first noticed him during a routine maintenance check in Denver. I was helping the crew replace a faulty part on a Falcon 900, my hair tied back, oil smudged on my jeans. Most people look surprised to see the owner elbow deep in engine grease, but not Michael. He just handed me the right wrench and started talking about how the mountains outside his hometown in Colorado made him fall in love with flying. It didn't happen all at once, but over months, a friendship grew. We talked about everything: planes, music, our families, our hopes for the future. I told him things I'd never said out loud before, about feeling invisible in my own family, about building something just to prove to myself I could. He listened, never judging, always supportive. And then, one quiet evening at the hangar, after a long day of paperwork and flight logs, he kissed me. It felt natural, like taking a deep breath after holding it for too long. We kept things simple. No grand declarations or rushed decisions. Michael moved in with me, and life settled into a rhythm. Flights to Europe and back, shared meals, long walks through Griffith Park, dreaming together about what might come next. He wasn't interested in my bank account or my business empire. He was interested in me, just Olivia, not the jet owner, not the family disappointment. A year later, we decided to get married. I didn't want anything flashy, nothing that would make the headlines or draw attention. We chose Aspen, Colorado, in late spring. The air was crisp, the mountains still dusted with snow, and a handful of close friends, most of them pilots or flight crew, joined us for a quiet ceremony in a wooden lodge. I wore a simple dress, no frills, and Michael looked handsome in his suit. We wrote our vows, promising honesty, patience, and to always keep each other grounded, even when we were 30,000 feet above the world. But privacy, as I'd learned, is hard to maintain when you work with people who talk to people who talk to the press. Somehow, word got out. Maybe it was a nosy hotel guest or a photographer who caught a glimpse of our little celebration. Maybe it was just the sheer oddity of the story, a mystery jet owner getting married in the Rockies, far from the glare of Los Angeles or New York. Within days, photos of me and Michael appeared online. Someone dug up records of blue sky charters, and suddenly, my name was everywhere, on TV, in glossy magazines, all over America, and even in the business pages of London and Paris. Secret millionaire's wedding in Aspen. One headline read, "Private jet Queen Mary's pilot bow," said another. I was embarrassed at first. I'd spent so many years avoiding the spotlight, content to fly under the radar, literally and figuratively. Now I was the center of attention, the subject of gossip and wild speculation. People wanted to know how I'd done it, how a quiet woman from Boston had built an empire in the sky. The phone rang off the hook. Reporters, old friends, even celebrities who wanted to charter my jets now that they knew who I was. But more than anyone else, it was my family who came calling. Suddenly, cousins who hadn't spoken to me in years wanted to reconnect. My parents left messages, awkward and hesitant. And Jacob, my brother, who hadn't invited me to his wedding, called over and over, leaving voicemails that grew more desperate with each ring. In those moments, with the world suddenly interested in my story, I realized something profound. The approval I'd chased for years had never mattered. What mattered was the life I'd built, the company, the friends, the partner who loved me for who I was. For the first time, I felt seen, not because the world was watching, but because I'd finally let myself be seen. And in that strange new light, I understood the real freedom I'd gained. Not just freedom in the sky, but freedom from needing to be anything for anyone but myself. If you had told me a year ago that I'd wake up to 500 missed calls in a weekend, I would have laughed and called you dramatic. But then again, nothing about the last year had been normal, and the universe has a way of surprising us just when we think we've figured everything out. The morning after my wedding aired on television, I rolled over, expecting to find Michael still dozing beside me. Instead, my phone was lighting up like a Christmas tree, notifications buzzing so loudly that even our dog, Max, looked annoyed. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe an alarm I'd forgotten to turn off, or a group chat gone wild. But as the missed calls multiplied and the messages kept pouring in, reality set in with a kind of surreal clarity. My family, the same family that had ignored my existence for so long, suddenly couldn't get enough of me. There was a message from my mother, her voice trembling on the recording. "Olivia, we had no idea, sweetheart. Please call us. We want to talk." Then one from Dad, trying and failing to sound casual. "Hey Liv, it's your old man. Looks like you've been busy. Give us a call, okay?" And Jacob, my brother who once called me just a passenger's garbage collector. His first message was short, almost formal. "Olivia, I saw the news. Call me." By the third message, his tone had changed completely. "Ollie, please let's talk. I'm sorry, okay? I want to hear your story. I have cousins from Chicago, aunts in New Jersey, friends I hadn't seen since high school, even relatives from Europe I barely remembered. They all wanted something. Can we visit your house in Los Angeles? Any chance I could fly on one of your jets? You're amazing, Olivia. Why didn't you ever tell us?" It was as if, overnight, the very people who dismissed and underestimated me decided I was suddenly worth their attention. I stared at the wall of notifications, a strange mixture of anger and amusement growing inside me. It wasn't that I didn't love them in some deep, old way. Family ties run stubbornly deep, like roots under the surface of your life. But in that moment, all I could remember was the sound of their laughter when I called for support, the cold edge in my brother's voice, and the way my parents always saw me as someone small and ordinary. Suddenly, it all felt very far away. The messages kept coming, all day and into the next. At one point, I set my phone on the kitchen counter and watched the screen fill with calls. 5, 10, 20 in a row. Each one a reminder of the years I'd spent waiting for them to notice me, to be proud of me, not for what I could do for them, but for who I was. Now that I had something they wanted, a story, a jet, a ticket into a world they'd never imagined, I was the golden child. Michael watched me with quiet concern, letting me decide how to handle it all. He never once told me what to do or offered advice unless I asked. Instead, He brewed coffee and made pancakes, humming some old Beatles song while I stood there, arms crossed, heart racing. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could just exist. No explanations, no performance. The truth was, I didn't want to call anyone back. I knew that if I answered, the conversations would be about them. They'd want to know how I built my company, how much money I had, and why I kept it secret. They'd want to see it on my jets, a weekend in Los Angeles, a piece of a life they'd never cared about until it became headline news. I could already imagine the questions. Can you fly us to Paris next month? Do you know any celebrities? Maybe you can invest in my new business idea? But I was done being a passenger in my own story. For too long, I'd let their opinions steer the course of my life. Now, I had everything I needed, a business I loved, a partner who saw me, a chosen family who celebrated my victories and picked me up after my failures. The people who laughed at me before didn't deserve a ticket now. I realized, with a clarity that took my breath away, that I didn't owe them anything. Not my story, not my money, not even an answer. So I let the phone ring. I watched the calls pile up, the texts grow longer and more insistent. I listened to the messages, heard the regret and longing in their voices, but I didn't pick up. I spent that weekend with Michael, walking through the hills above the city, breathing in the sharp, clean air. We talked about the future, where we might travel next, what new routes we wanted to open for blue sky charters, and the possibility of starting a family of our own someday. For once, the past didn't matter. The old wounds, the family disappointments, the years spent trying to fit in, they felt like someone else's story. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd called them back. Maybe there would have been apologies, maybe there would have been more laughter, the kind that hurts more than it heals. Or maybe things would have gone right back to the way they always were, me on the outside, watching through the window while they ate dinner together. But I knew better now. I'd found something better than their approval. I'd found freedom. In the weeks that followed, the story died down. The world moved on to the next headline, and my phone grew quiet again. Occasionally, a cousin or an old friend would send a text, testing the water, but I answered only when I wanted to on my terms. I flew across the country and over the Atlantic, watching the cities of America and Europe drift by beneath my wings. Up in the sky, the world felt peaceful and endless, and I understood that family isn't just about blood or tradition. It's about who stands beside you when the sky gets dark, who helps you build the life you dream of, even when everyone else says it's impossible. My crew became my family. The pilots and flight attendants who showed up day after day, who laughed with me in the hangar and shared quiet meals between flights. Michael, who loved me for who I was, not the jet owner, not the prodigal daughter, just Olivia. And maybe, in some strange way, even my dog Max, who never cared about money or headlines or family drama, just about curling up beside me at the end of the day. If I'm honest, I wouldn't change any of it. Not the rejection, not the pain, not even the lonely moments. Every twist in the story brought me here, to this life I built with my own hands. And if being just a passenger's garbage collector taught me anything, it's that sometimes the people who throw you away end up missing out on the best parts of your story. In the end, I learned that I was never collecting garbage. I was collecting freedom and building a future where the only approval I needed was my own. And that, I suppose, is how my family's laughter became my greatest lesson. The sky is wide and open, and I'm flying it on my terms now.